"Who fixed this ship?" asked Alien Queen. Everyone froze when person who stepped forward was a human. The Zorathian flagship floated silently in the empty black of space. Its hull was scratched and dented from the last battle, and smoke rose from cracks along the side. The ship's engines were dead, leaving it drifting without control. Inside, the corridors were quiet at first, then filled with alarmed voices as the crew realized the full danger. Lights flickered. Air recycled slowly. Something was wrong with the life support system, and tension ran high. Queen Luria stood at the command platform, her long, silver robes flowing behind her as she observed the situation. Her eyes, sharp and bright, scanned the displays. Around her, officers and engineers moved quickly, their scales glinting under the harsh white lights. They were skilled, trained, and proud, yet no one had been able to fix the core damage. The engines refused to start, the power lines were fried, and the main circuits had burned out. "This is impossible," one officer said. His voice trembled slightly. "We have tried every solution known to our engineers. The ship cannot be saved." Queen Luria turned her head slowly toward him. "Impossible is only a word," she said. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of authority. "Tell me why you have failed." The officer hesitated. "The damage, it is unlike anything we have faced. The engine core is broken in multiple places. The conduits are melted and the stabilizers are offline. The ship cannot be repaired without a complete overhaul." "Without a complete overhaul," the Queen repeated, her eyes narrowing. "And how long would that take?" The officer swallowed hard. "Weeks, maybe months. Weeks, months." The Queen did not need to be told what that meant. The fleet around them, the smaller ships that relied on the flagship's command, would be sitting ducks in open space. The enemy could find them at any moment. They had no way to defend themselves without the flagship's engines. Every second counted. Her jaw tightened. She turned to the other engineers, a group of different species, some tall and thin, others short and strong. All looked worried and all looked exhausted. "Is there no one among you who can solve this problem?" she asked. They exchanged nervous glances. One by one, they shook their heads. None of them dared speak. The Queen's presence was intimidating, and her reputation even more so. She had led fleets through battles that others said could not be won. Yet here, her own flagship was helpless. In a corner, a group of humans watched quietly. They had been aboard the fleet for a few months as observers and liaisons. They were diplomats, engineers, and scientists sent from Earth to learn from the Zorathians and share knowledge. Most of the aliens looked at them with mild curiosity, sometimes suspicion. Humans were fragile, weak compared to these tall, strong, and disciplined alien soldiers. Most aliens believed humans could do little more than observe. Among the humans, a young engineer named Ethan Moore stood with his hands folded. He was not tall, not particularly strong, and his face was covered in soot and sweat from examining other small systems on the ship. Yet his eyes were calm, focused, and observant. He had been studying the damaged core for hours. While the alien engineers had panicked, he had been quietly thinking about the problem. He had noticed something others missed. A small part of the engine core was still functional, a tiny stabilizer left intact. If rerouted correctly, it could bring power back to the main engines. It would not be elegant. It would not follow any standard procedure, but it could work. The Queen turned to look at him, perhaps noticing him for the first time. "Humans," she said sharply, her voice carrying through the control room. "You have been here for weeks. Tell me, can your kind do anything useful in a moment like this?" Ethan's stomach tightened. He had expected doubt, even scorn, but not an open challenge from the Queen herself. He stepped forward slightly, his voice steady. "I think I can help," he said. The room froze. Silence fell like a heavy weight. Alien officers stopped moving. Engineers holding tools paused mid-step. Even the soldiers in the back stopped their anxious chatter. They could not believe what they had just heard. A human, stepping forward, claiming to fix the flagship that had defeated dozens of experienced alien engineers. It was almost laughable. Queen Luria's eyes narrowed. "You," she asked. "You are a human. You have never worked on a ship like this. You do not even know our technology fully. How could you possibly help?" Ethan swallowed but did not step back. "I have studied your systems," he said. "I may not know everything the same way you do, but I can try to reroute the power through the remaining stabilizers. It will take careful work, and it may be dangerous, but it could get the engines running again." The Queen looked around the room. Murmurs had started among the officers. Some shook their heads, others whispered in disbelief. "This is foolish," one officer said. "The human cannot do this. If we let him try, he will fail and we may lose more than the ship." Another officer spoke, his voice almost desperate. "Your Majesty, the human is weak. He is not trained in our methods. Let us continue with the standard protocols. They are designed to work. If we attempt something outside our procedures—" Queen Luria raised her hand. Silence returned. "Enough," she said. Her gaze fell back on Ethan. "If you fail, the consequences will be yours alone. Yet if you succeed, perhaps you will prove more than we expect of your kind. Do you understand?" "I understand," Ethan replied firmly. She nodded. "Then begin. But know this, every second counts. One mistake and this ship is lost." Ethan moved quickly. He examined the core, his hands tracing the alien machinery carefully. He was not afraid, though the heat from damaged circuits burned his gloves. Sparks flew in small bursts, and the smell of burnt metal filled the air. Alien engineers hovered nearby, watching nervously. They were ready to intervene at any moment, but none dared touch his work. He located the small functional stabilizer, hidden behind twisted conduits and panels. Carefully, he connected a series of temporary links, rerouting power around the damaged circuits. He had no idea if it would hold, but he trusted the basic principles of electricity and engineering. Aliens often relied on rigid systems, but humans had a talent for improvising when systems failed. Minutes passed. Alarms continued to blare. Crew members shouted updates as systems flickered on and off. Ethan's hands moved steadily, adjusting conduits, testing connections, and rewiring small circuits. Every second felt like an hour. One engineer leaned forward, whispering to a colleague, "He cannot do this. Humans are weak, this is impossible." Another shook his head. "I have never seen anything like this. Perhaps he has a chance." The Queen watched silently, her long fingers resting on the console. She felt something unfamiliar, curiosity, mixed with a sense of danger. The human could succeed. He might also fail. But either way, she could not look away. Ethan worked with precision, relying on simple tools and his knowledge of human engineering logic. He bypassed damaged conduits and connected power lines in ways that no Zorathian engineer would dare. His movements were careful but confident, like someone who had faced impossible problems before and learned to adapt quickly. Finally, he took a deep breath and activated the temporary circuits. The ship shuddered. Sparks flew. A low hum began to grow louder as energy flowed through the engines. Aliens gasped. The lights on the consoles flickered but held steady. Power indicators rose from red to yellow. The Queen leaned forward slightly. "It is responding," she said quietly. Ethan worked quickly to stabilize the remaining circuits, adjusting each connection as the engines slowly roared to life. The hum grew stronger. Systems that had been dead began blinking online. Life support, communications, navigational arrays, one by one they came back. The alien engineers stared, mouths open. They had worked for hours, using all the knowledge they had, and failed. Yet this fragile human, small and unassuming, had brought the ship back from the brink. Finally, with a hiss of pressurized air and a glow of blue energy, the engines fully engaged. The flagship lifted slightly from its position in zero gravity, ready to move again. The alarm ceased. Silence returned. The Queen looked at Ethan, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke, her voice soft but firm. "You have done what none of our best engineers could. You are remarkable." Ethan wiped his brow, trying not to show relief or pride. "I just did what I thought would work," he said quietly. The Queen's eyes narrowed. "No, you did more than that. You have reminded us all that sometimes the smallest and least expected can achieve what the mighty cannot. Remember this, officers." Today, a human saved the flagship. The room remained quiet. Whispers began to spread among the crew. Some stared in disbelief. Others nodded slowly, understanding what had just happened. A human, weak by their standards, had saved the flagship. The implications were clear. Perhaps humans were not as fragile as everyone believed. Ethan stepped back, exhausted but composed. He had done what he could. The Queen's gaze lingered on him. Somewhere deep inside, she began to sense that this human was not just capable, but exceptional in ways her kind had never imagined. Outside, the fleet remained adrift, but now hope had returned. If one human could save the flagship, perhaps the galaxy had underestimated their kind. And Queen Luria, who had seen countless battles and countless victories, now realized that the presence of humans on her fleet might change everything. The engine room of the Zorathian flagship was still warm from the energy pulse that had brought the ship back to life. Sparks still danced along some of the circuits, and the smell of burnt metal lingered. Alien engineers hovered nervously, whispering to each other, their long claws tapping against metal consoles. No one had touched the human, Ethan Moore, though some clearly wanted to. They did not understand how he had done what none of them could. Queen Luria walked slowly down the corridor toward the engine room. Her long robes made a soft swishing sound against the floor, but the crew still stepped aside immediately. Silence followed her wherever she went. She had seen humans before, of course, but never one who had fixed a Zorathian ship. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag, his face streaked with sweat and black soot. He had been working nonstop for hours, rerouting power and stabilizing circuits, yet he did not feel tired. His mind was focused on the task ahead. The ship's core was functional again, but it was far from fully repaired. Any sudden movement or mistake could cause the engines to fail again. One of the alien engineers stepped forward, a tall creature with green scales and sharp eyes. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly, "perhaps we should check his work. It may be unstable. We must ensure safety." The Queen raised a hand. "Do not touch him," she said firmly. "He is not like the others. He does not need interference. Observe only." The engineer's eyes widened, but he did not argue. He knew better than to question the Queen, though the disbelief was clear in his posture. Ethan looked at the Queen. "I think the main stabilizer will hold," he said, "but I need to go deeper. The core has hidden damage. If I can reach it, I can secure the circuits and prevent a full shutdown. It will be dangerous, but it can be done." The Queen studied him for a long moment. She saw the calm in his eyes, the certainty in his hands, and something inside her stirred. She had commanded thousands of soldiers, faced enemies who could destroy entire fleets, and survived every battle. Yet this small human, fragile in appearance, did not seem afraid. "Very well," she said finally. "You may proceed. But understand this, if you fail, the consequences will fall upon you and your kind. You will be remembered for failure, not success." Ethan nodded. "I understand." He moved toward the central core chamber, a massive room filled with humming engines and glowing conduits. Aliens followed at a distance, their long eyes wide with wonder and fear. None dared approach too closely, as if they believed that touching him might undo what he had accomplished. Inside the chamber, the damage was worse than Ethan had thought. Panels hung loose, wires burned through, and a faint orange glow came from a crack in the main energy conduit. The air was hotter here, filled with the smell of ozone and burning metal. Sparks flew occasionally, making small arcs across the floor. Ethan knelt and began inspecting the damage. His hands moved quickly but carefully, connecting temporary circuits, testing voltage, and rerouting power through the few functional stabilizers. He spoke softly to himself as he worked, thinking aloud to keep his mind focused. Okay, that line is stable. If I reroute through here, I can bypass the core, maybe, he muttered. A soldier nearby gasped. He is not afraid, the creature whispered to a companion. He touches circuits that would burn a Zorathian alive. How is this possible? The companion shook his head. It is human, impossible to understand. Perhaps it is a gift or a trick of luck. Ethan continued working, ignoring the whispers. He had learned early in life that humans survived because they adapted. When a problem seemed impossible, they found another way. He was doing exactly that now. The alien engineers, trained in rigid protocols, could not see the solution because they would not break the rules. He had no such limits. Hours passed and the chamber grew warmer. Ethan moved from one damaged area to another, connecting, testing, and adjusting. The engines groaned but held steady. Slowly, the hum of the power core grew stronger, rising from low and uneven to steady and reliable. Outside, the Queen watched with folded arms. She did not speak, but her mind raced. She had seen many things in her life, but she had never seen a human work like this. There was creativity, courage, and calm under pressure, qualities rare in any species. Finally, Ethan stood and wiped his forehead. The engines were humming steadily now, power flowing evenly through the conduits. He had repaired the main circuits enough to stabilize the ship, at least temporarily. But there was still work to do. I need to reinforce the main conduit, he said. It is holding, but it could fail if we move at full speed. I can create a bypass and strengthen the lines, but I will need access to the inner core. The Queen's eyes widened slightly. The inner core was dangerous. No Zorathian had entered it without full protective gear. One mistake could mean death, and yet Ethan seemed calm. Do it, she said finally, but be careful. If you die, it will not be forgotten. Ethan nodded and moved deeper into the core. The air grew hotter and the hum of energy was deafening. Sparks flew around him and the smell of burning metal was stronger here. He worked methodically, connecting circuits, testing power flows, and carefully bypassing the damaged areas. An officer whispered to another, voice trembling, "He is touching the heart of the ship without any fear. How can this human survive where we would fail?" The companion shook his head. "He is not like us," he said softly. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as we believed. Perhaps they are something more." Inside, Ethan adjusted the final connections. Sweat ran down his face, but his hands were steady. He checked every wire, every link, every stabilizer. Then he activated the final bypass. A surge of power ran through the main conduit, and the hum of the engines rose to full strength. Outside, the alien crew gasped as the energy readings on the console stabilized. Lights that had been dim flickered on fully. Systems that had been offline began blinking to life. Life support normalized and the ship's movement sensors confirmed stability. The Queen stepped closer, her eyes wide. "It is working," she said softly. Ethan looked up and nodded. "The ship is stable. The engines will hold for now. We can move, but it is not fully repaired yet. I will need time and space to finish the job, but the immediate danger is gone." A soldier whispered, He saved the flagship. A human saved the flagship." The Queen turned slowly toward Ethan. "You did this alone?" Ethan shrugged slightly. "Not entirely. I followed what I understood about the systems. But yes, mostly. It was not impossible, just different from your usual methods." The Queen stared at him for a long moment. She had commanded thousands of soldiers and engineers in her life. She had faced enemies that would destroy worlds. Yet here was a small human doing what her best engineers could not. "You have changed something today," she said finally. "Not just the ship, but the way we think. Perhaps humans are more capable than we imagined." Ethan smiled faintly. "We adapt," he said simply. "That is what humans do. Outside the core, the crew began murmuring. Aliens whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others nodding slowly. They had seen it with their own eyes. A human, small and fragile, had done what many thought impossible. The Queen turned to the lead engineer, her gaze sharp. "Remember this moment," she said. "A human has proven themselves today. Do not forget it." The engineer nodded slowly, still in shock. I will remember, Your Majesty." Ethan stepped back from the core, exhausted but calm. The immediate danger had passed. He had stabilized the ship, but he knew the work was not finished. There would be repairs to complete, systems to monitor, and reinforcements to strengthen the engines. Yet for now, the flagship was alive. Queen Luria studied him once more. She could see the determination in his eyes, the calm in his posture, and the intelligence in his movements. She realized something profound. Humans were not just survivors. They were problem solvers, thinkers, and adapters. They could accomplish things no other species could. A small smile touched her lips, almost hidden, but the officers noticed. Something rare had happened today. A human had earned her respect, and she would not forget it. As the flagship began to regain full function, whispers spread through the corridors. A human saved the ship. A human touched the inner core. Perhaps we underestimated them. Ethan walked toward the Queen, sweat streaked across his face, hands blackened from soot. He was calm, but the crew could feel the energy around him. Something about this human was different. Strong in ways that were not measured by size or claws or scales, but by mind, courage, and calm action under pressure. Queen Luria's voice rang out clearly. "Human, you have done what many said could not be done. The ship lives because of you. Do not forget this lesson, officers. Perhaps the galaxy is about to learn something new about humans." Ethan nodded quietly. "I just did what I could," he said, simple and honest. The Queen's eyes lingered on him. Somewhere deep inside, she realized that humans might not just survive among the stars. They might change the stars themselves. And for the first time, the aliens truly looked at humanity not as fragile observers, but as something to respect, and perhaps even fear in the right way. The deeper parts of the flagship were unlike anything Ethan had ever worked on before. The inner core was a massive chamber filled with thick, glowing conduits and humming engines. Heat radiated from the machinery, making the air heavy and thick. Sparks jumped from damaged circuits, and the smell of burning metal filled the space. The engines were alive with unstable energy, like a storm ready to break. Ethan took a deep breath and stepped carefully inside. Every footfall echoed loudly. The alien engineers and soldiers followed at a distance, their eyes wide with disbelief. None of them dared move closer. They had watched him stabilize the outer circuits with skill that defied all their training. But now the human was entering the very heart of the flagship, a place even the bravest Zorathians avoided. "This is madness," one engineer whispered. "The human will die. The core is unstable, a spark and it will all end in fire." The other shook his head. "I don't understand it. He survived before." "How?" Ethan ignored them. He could feel the energy thrumming through the floor and walls. The main stabilizer he had repaired was holding, but barely. Any misstep and the core could fail, taking the ship and everyone on it with it. He knelt in front of the main energy conduit. The lines were burned and broken in several places. The metal glowed orange in spots, and tiny arcs of electricity jumped across the gaps. He carefully inspected each damaged section, tracing the energy paths with his hands. His fingers burned slightly from heat, but he kept moving. Humans survived because they adapted. Fear would not stop him. Only careful, steady action would. "This line, it can be rerouted," he muttered to himself. "If I bypass here and connect there, maybe it will hold." He pulled out his tools, small wrenches and metal rods he had brought with him. Alien engineers looked at him, mouths open. They did not know what he was doing, and they did not understand why it was working. Minutes passed. Sparks flew, and the low hum of the engines fluctuated. Ethan connected a bypass, carefully joining broken circuits with improvised links. He tested each connection before moving to the next. Every small success made the hum steadier. Every mistake could have ended in disaster. Outside the core, the Queen watched closely. Her eyes followed every movement. She had never seen a human work like this. Calm, steady, and focused under pressure, the crew around her whispered again, "He is risking his life. No Zorathian would dare." Another voice added, "Yet he moves with certainty. It is incredible." Ethan moved to the next section of the inner core. Here, the damage was worse. Thick conduits had melted and fused together. The energy lines were unstable. He had to carefully separate them before reconnecting anything. One wrong move, one sudden spark, and it could overload the entire system. He wiped sweat from his brow and focused. "Steady, slow, careful," he muttered. The air grew hotter. Sparks shot higher and hissed as they hit the walls. Alien engineers took a step back, shaking. "He is playing with death," one said, but Ethan did not think of death. He thought of the ship, the fleet, and the lives depending on him. Humans survived because they focused on solutions, not fear. That focus guided his hands as he twisted, cut, and connected the circuits. Hours passed, and the hum of the engines began to stabilize slowly. Lights flickered and then stayed steady. The energy readings on the consoles outside the core began to rise. The Queen's eyes widened. "It is working," she whispered. Ethan wiped his hands again and moved to the largest conduit. This one carried almost all the energy for the core. It was cracked, glowing hot, and dangerous. He could feel the heat through his gloves. His heart beat steadily. One wrong connection could blow the conduit, destroying the ship. He studied the lines, looking for weak points. Then carefully, he connected a bypass using a metal rod he had prepared. Electricity arced across the space, and the conduit shook violently. Sparks flew into the air. He held his breath. Slowly, the hum of the engines became smoother. Energy flowed evenly through the core. Systems began to stabilize. Alien engineers gasped, unable to believe what they were seeing. Outside the chamber, whispers spread quickly. "He touched the inner conduit and survived." "He is human, impossible." "No Zorathian could have done that." Ethan moved to another section. Here, several conduits had fused into one mass of melted metal. He had to separate them carefully to prevent a short circuit. His hands moved steadily, using small tools to pry the metal apart without triggering sparks. Come on," he muttered. Suddenly, a spark jumped across one of the broken lines. The energy surged violently. Ethan reacted quickly, grounding the current with a metal rod and rerouting the power. The surge passed, and the engine's hum returned, stronger than before. He took a deep breath, his heart racing. That had been close, too close, but he could not stop, not now. The inner core was almost stabilized, but one section remained dangerously unstable. This section was the main energy regulator, the heart of the ship. It had been damaged during the battle and now threatened to shut down completely. Ethan examined it, noting cracks in the metal and burned circuits. The energy flowing through it was uneven, pulsing dangerously. He reached out carefully, connecting temporary stabilizers. Sparks flew around him and he could feel the heat through his gloves. Sweat poured down his face. His breath was steady, but inside he was aware of the risk. One misstep here and the core could explode. The Queen leaned closer from the observation deck, her eyes wide. She could feel the tension in the air, the danger radiating from the core chamber. Yet the human moved calmly, with precision, focusing only on the task. Ethan worked methodically, connecting circuits and testing power flow. Slowly, the hum of the engines began to stabilize. The pulsing energy became smooth. Systems outside the core started coming online one by one. Lights blinked steadily. Life support normalized. One of the alien engineers whispered, barely audible, "He is saving the ship." Another shook his head. "We watched him. He is human." How is this possible? Ethan wiped his forehead again and stepped back. The inner core was nearly stabilized. Only minor adjustments remained. His hands were blackened from soot and his gloves were scorched, but he moved with determination. He connected the final temporary stabilizer and tested the energy flow. The engine's hum became steady and strong. The core lights glowed a calm blue. Systems readings outside the chamber confirmed stability. The ship was alive. The Queen's eyes softened slightly. She had commanded thousands of soldiers, faced countless enemies, and survived battles that seemed hopeless. Yet here, in this chamber, a small human had done what none of her best engineers could. She spoke softly, almost to herself. Perhaps we underestimated humans. Ethan stepped out of the core chamber, wiping sweat from his face. Alien engineers and soldiers looked at him in awe. Some bowed slightly, others whispered. The Queen's gaze remained fixed on him. She could see the determination, intelligence, and calm courage in his eyes. "You have done it," she said finally. "The flagship lives because of you. You are remarkable." Ethan shook his head. "I just did what I could," he said simply. "The ship is stable, but it still needs full repairs. This is only the first step." The Queen nodded slowly. She understood. This human was not only skilled but adaptable. He had faced impossible danger and succeeded because he could think beyond rigid rules. That was something her people did not always possess. Outside, the crew whispered among themselves. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others nodded slowly, understanding what had just happened. A human, small and fragile, had stabilized the inner core. He had survived sparks, surging energy, and intense heat. He had done what no Zorathian could. The Queen spoke again, her voice carrying through the observation deck. "Remember this moment, officers. A human has proven themselves today. Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated them. Perhaps it is time to reconsider what humans are capable of." Ethan took a deep breath and wiped soot from his gloves. He looked around at the alien crew, their wide eyes and quiet or clear. He felt tired, yes, but alive. The flagship was stabilized, at least for now. The fleet would survive. And somewhere inside, he knew this was only the beginning. Humans had been underestimated for too long. Today, he had shown what one human could do. Tomorrow, the galaxy might see even more. The Queen's eyes lingered on him. For the first time, she realized that humans might not only survive in space, they might thrive, challenge, and even change the galaxy. Ethan turned to her and nodded quietly. "The ship is safe for now," he said. "But there is more work to do." Queen Luria smiled faintly. It was the first sign of warmth she had shown anyone in years. "I trust you, human. Complete your work. The fleet depends on it." And as Ethan prepared to continue the repairs, the whispers grew louder among the alien crew. A human saved the inner core. No Zorathian could have done that. Perhaps we were wrong about them. For the first time, the presence of humanity in the fleet was more than observation or diplomacy. Humans had proven their worth, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The flagship's core chamber was quiet now, except for the hum of the engines. The air was thick with heat, and the smell of burned metal lingered, but the immediate danger had passed. Still, Ethan knew his work was far from done. Stabilizing the core was only the first step. The main conduits were still weak, and full power was not yet restored. Any rush to move the ship could cause failure. He wiped sweat from his brow and adjusted his gloves. His hands were blackened from soot, but his mind was clear. The human ability to focus, even in danger, had saved the ship so far. Now he needed to complete the work and make it fully secure. The alien crew watched from the observation deck and along the corridors. Their fear had shifted to awe mixed with disbelief. They had seen a human do what their best engineers could not. Some whispered quietly to each other. "He is extraordinary," one engineer said. "Impossible," muttered another. No Zorathian could survive this heat, these sparks, and the unstable energy. Queen Luria observed quietly. She had seen thousands of beings in her life, but none like this human. Ethan had not only survived the core, he had stabilized it. That required intelligence, courage, and patience, qualities rare even among the Zorathians. Ethan moved to the largest energy conduit, the one that carried nearly all the power for the ship. It had been badly damaged, burned, and cracked from the previous battle. Sparks jumped across gaps and the metal glowed orange. He studied it carefully, tracing the energy lines with his fingers. One wrong move could destroy the ship. He began connecting temporary stabilizers, improvising with small rods and wiring. Each connection needed precision. One misstep and the core could fail instantly. Sparks hissed around him. Heat radiated from the damaged metal. He worked slowly, carefully, testing each section before moving to the next. Outside, the alien crew whispered nervously. "He touches the heart of the ship without fear." Another voice said, "He is human, but he moves with control no Zorathian could match." Ethan moved to the next section. This area was worse. Several conduits had fused together in melted metal, and energy pulses surged unpredictably. He had to separate the lines carefully. One mistake could short-circuit the entire system. "Steady, slow, precise," he muttered to himself. His hands shook slightly from heat and fatigue, but his mind remained clear. Humans survived because they adapted. Fear could not stop him. Only careful action would save the ship. A sudden surge ran through one of the conduits. Sparks jumped across the floor. Ethan reacted instantly, grounding the current with a metal rod and rerouting the energy. The engines groaned but stabilized. He exhaled slowly. That had been close, too close. The Queen leaned forward slightly from the observation deck. Her eyes were wide. She had faced countless enemies, seen countless deaths, and survived impossible battles. Yet this human, small and fragile by appearance, had done what no Zorathian could. Ethan moved to the final section of the core. Here, the main regulator controlled the entire ship. It had been badly damaged. The metal was cracked and warped. Energy pulses surged dangerously, threatening to overload. He studied the regulator carefully. The heat was intense, sparks flew, and the smell of burning metal was strong. He carefully connected temporary stabilizers, rerouting energy through the remaining circuits. His hands moved quickly but precisely. Every connection mattered. One mistake could destroy the ship instantly. The alien engineers and soldiers watched silently. Some shook their heads, others whispered, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Queen's eyes remained fixed on Ethan. She could feel the tension in the air, the danger radiating from the core chamber. Yet the human moved calmly, with determination and skill. Minutes passed. The energy flow became smoother. Sparks disappeared. The hum of the engines grew steady. Lights blinked on along the consoles. Life support readings normalized. Systems that had been offline began to function. The ship was alive. Ethan wiped his hands again, blackened and scorched from soot. He took a deep breath and looked around the chamber. The main core was stable. The engines were ready to move. The immediate danger had passed. Outside, the crew whispered among themselves. "He did it. A human saved the inner core. No Zorathian could have survived this." Queen Luria spoke, her voice calm but full of authority. "Human, you have done what none of our best engineers could. The flagship lives because of you. You are remarkable." Ethan shook his head. "I just did what I could," he said. "The ship is stable, but it still needs full repair. This is only the beginning." The Queen studied him carefully. She could see the determination, intelligence, and calm courage in his eyes. For the first time, she realized that humans were not weak or fragile. They could think, adapt, and act under pressure in ways no other species could. The alien crew began to murmur, slowly realizing what had happened. They had always believed humans were weak. Small, fragile observers who could do little. But now one human had stabilized the flagship, touched the inner core, and survived sparks, heat, and unstable energy. The Queen's eyes softened slightly. "Perhaps we have underestimated them," she said quietly. Ethan moved to inspect the conduits one last time. He checked every connection, every stabilizer, and every energy line. The ship was ready to move, but he noticed one small section still weak. It would hold for now, but it needed reinforcement. "I will need more tools and time to finish this properly," he said, "but the ship can move. The fleet can escape if needed." The Queen nodded. "Do it. Take whatever you need. The fleet depends on you." The aliens around her looked stunned. Some whispered quietly. "The human is trusted by the Queen." "Unbelievable," said another. "We have watched him work. He is human, and yet the Queen believes in him." Ethan moved carefully, reinforcing the remaining conduits. Sparks flew occasionally, but he handled them calmly. Slowly, the main regulator was fully secured. The energy flow became perfectly stable. The hum of the engines was steady and strong. The ship was fully alive. Queen Luria stepped closer. "You have done the impossible," she said. "Not only did you save the ship, but you have shown us the value of your kind. Humans are more capable than I imagined." Ethan smiled faintly. "We adapt," he said simply. "That is what humans do." The crew watched silently, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others nodding slowly. They had underestimated humans for too long. One human had done what many had thought impossible. The Queen spoke again. "Remember this moment, officers. A human has proven themselves today. Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated them. Perhaps it is time to reconsider what humans are capable of." Ethan took a deep breath and wiped soot from his gloves. He looked around at the alien crew, their wide eyes and quiet all clear. He felt tired, yes, but alive. The flagship was fully stabilized. The fleet would survive. And somewhere inside, he knew this was only the beginning. Humans had been underestimated for too long. Today, he had shown what one human could do. Tomorrow, the galaxy might see even more. Queen Luria's eyes lingered on him. For the first time, she realized that humans might not only survive in space, they might thrive, challenge, and even change the galaxy. Ethan turned to her and nodded quietly. "The ship is safe now," he said, "but there is more work ahead." Queen Luria smiled faintly. It was the first sign of warmth she had shown in years. "I trust you, human. Complete your work. The fleet depends on it." The aliens around them whispered. A human saved the flagship. No Zorathian could have done that. Perhaps we were wrong about them. Ethan walked back to the outer part of the core chamber, examining minor systems and conduits. The ship was stable, but he knew the full repair would take hours. Still, the hard part was done. The fleet could survive now because he had acted. The Queen watched him, her expression thoughtful. She had led fleets through battles, commanded legions, and seen countless victories and defeats. Yet this human had impressed her in ways no Zorathian had ever managed. Calm under pressure, clever in thinking, and brave in action. A true problem solver. Outside the core chamber, the fleet's other ships began reporting stability. Power systems restored, engines functioning, and life support normalized. The flagship could move again. The fleet was no longer helpless. The Queen turned to the lead engineer. "Remember this human-s work," she said. "Today, he has changed the way we view humanity. Perhaps they are not the weak observers we thought. Perhaps they are something greater," the lead engineer bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty, I will remember." Ethan finished his inspection and stepped back. His hands were blackened, his gloves scorched, and his face streaked with sweat. He was tired, but he felt satisfaction. The ship was fully alive. The fleet could move. Lives had been saved. The Queen studied him one last time. "You have earned your place here, human," she said quietly, "and perhaps the galaxy has earned a new understanding of your kind." Ethan nodded, feeling a quiet pride. Humans had been underestimated for too long. Today, they had proven their worth. Tomorrow, the universe might see just how capable they truly were. The observation deck was filled with whispers. Aliens shook their heads in disbelief. some smiling, some in awe. A human had done what none of them thought possible. And somewhere deep inside, Queen Lurya realized that humanity's future among the stars was no longer uncertain. They had arrived and they had proven themselves. The flagship hummed steadily now, a deep, even vibration running through its massive frame. Lights glowed steadily on every console and life support readings were perfect. The alien crew had begun to relax, some letting out quiet sighs of relief. The immediate danger was over and the ship was alive again. But the mood was not just relief, it was awe. Ethan Moore stepped back from the inner core, wiping sweat and soot from his gloves. His face was streaked with black, his clothes scorched in several places, and his hair was damp from the heat. Yet his eyes were calm, steady, and bright. He looked around at the alien engineers and soldiers, noticing their disbelief and admiration. Queen Lurya watched him from the observation deck. Her eyes were sharp and calculating, yet a flicker of something else showed in them: respect. She had commanded legions, survived countless battles, and faced enemies who could destroy entire fleets. Yet she had never seen a human accomplish what Ethan had done. Not only had he stabilized the flagship, he had touched the inner core and survived sparks, heat, and unstable energy where no Zorathian could. "Human," she said finally, her voice carrying across the chamber, "you have done what none of our best engineers could. You have saved the flagship and perhaps the entire fleet. Speak. What is your next step?" Ethan took a deep breath. "The ship is stable, Your Majesty. The engines will hold, the core is secure, and all systems are functional. I can begin full repairs to ensure long-term stability. It will take time, but the immediate danger has passed. The fleet can move if needed." The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Time, you will have it, and the fleet will follow your guidance. You may act as you see fit." The alien engineers whispered among themselves. "The Queen has trusted a human with the flagship," one said. Another shook his head. "Unbelievable. We watched him work. He is human, yet the Queen relies on him." Ethan moved to inspect the outer conduits, making small adjustments and checking the flow of energy. Sparks flew occasionally, but he handled them calmly. Outside the chamber, the Queen observed silently, her thoughts deep. Humans were small and fragile, yes, but they had qualities the Zorathians often lacked: adaptability, cleverness, and calm courage under pressure. Hours passed as Ethan worked. He reinforced the main conduits, tested the energy regulators, and checked every system. Alien engineers hovered nearby, ready to assist if needed, but none dared touch the work he had started. They were learning, watching carefully, and beginning to understand what made humans remarkable. Finally, Ethan wiped his hands on a cloth and stepped back. The ship was fully stabilized, every system functional. He looked at the Queen. "The flagship is completely operational now. The fleet can travel, fight, and survive any attack for the moment. All systems are ready." Queen Lurya nodded slowly. "You have done more than I could have imagined, human. You have proven your worth, not only to me but to the entire fleet. Your kind may be stronger than we ever expected." The alien crew whispered among themselves, their disbelief turning to admiration. Some bowed slightly, others simply stared in awe. A human had done what no Zorathian could. A human had saved the flagship. The Queen turned to the officers around her. "Remember this moment. A human has shown us that courage, intelligence, and adaptability matter more than size or strength. They have proven that one individual can change the fate of an entire fleet. Never forget it." Ethan nodded quietly. "I only did what I thought was possible," he said simply. "The ship needed help and I acted." The Queen studied him for a long moment. She had always valued discipline, obedience, and strength. Yet here was something different: ingenuity, bravery, and calm focus. A combination her species often lacked in extreme crisis situations. "Your actions have changed the way we see your kind," she said finally. "From this day forward, humans will no longer be observers. You have earned a place among us, not just as visitors, but as equals in knowledge and courage. Your contributions will be remembered." The crew around her murmured, and some smiled for the first time. They had always believed humans were fragile, weak observers. Now they could see the truth. Humans were strong in ways no one had understood. Ethan felt a quiet pride but did not let it show too much. He had not done this for praise. He had done it to save lives. Still, he could feel the weight of what he had accomplished. One human had changed the course of an entire fleet. The Queen walked closer, her long robes flowing behind her. She stopped near Ethan and looked at him directly. "You have not only saved this flagship, human, but you have earned my trust. When the fleet moves forward, you will guide our engineers and systems. I will not interfere with your work. That is how much I believe in you." Ethan nodded. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will do my best." The alien officers whispered among themselves. "The Queen has never done this for anyone before," one said, "not even for her best generals." Another replied, "Humans, they are not what we expected. Perhaps we should rethink our assumptions." Outside the flagship, the fleet began to move again. Engines roared to life, lights blazed, and energy flowed smoothly through every vessel. Communications confirmed stability across the fleet. The flagship, once powerless, now led the formation with strength. Ethan moved among the engineers, giving instructions, checking systems, and guiding repairs. Alien engineers watched him carefully, learning from his methods. His actions were deliberate but creative, showing flexibility and ingenuity that Zorathians rarely employed. One alien engineer leaned close to a companion and whispered, "The human, he thinks differently. He sees possibilities where we see only rules." The companion nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is why he succeeded where we failed. Perhaps humans are extraordinary." Ethan finished inspecting the last section of the core. Everything was secure. Systems were functioning at full capacity. He looked at the Queen. "The flagship is ready for anything now," he said. "The fleet can follow any course and respond to attacks. We are prepared." Queen Luria nodded, her expression firm but thoughtful. "You have done more than repair a ship, human. You have reminded all of us of something important, that courage, intelligence, and creativity can overcome impossible odds. That lesson will remain long after today." The crew around them murmured in agreement. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others smiled quietly. A human had done what no Zorathian could. A human had saved the flagship. A human had earned the Queen's respect. Ethan felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. He had acted when it mattered most. He had taken risks, adapted to challenges, and succeeded. The flagship was alive, the fleet was safe, and the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. The Queen's eyes softened as she looked at him. "Perhaps humanity has a greater role in the galaxy than we imagined. Your actions today may be remembered for generations." Ethan nodded quietly. "I hope we can do more than survive. I hope we can help, lead, and protect whenever we are needed." Outside the flagship, the fleet moved steadily through space. Ships that had once seemed helpless were now alive and ready. Communications ran smoothly. Energy readings confirmed stability. The flagship led the formation, strong and unbroken. The Queen spoke again, her voice carrying across the bridge. "Let it be known that humans are not to be underestimated. Today, one human has saved the flagship, and perhaps the fleet itself. This is a lesson we will not forget." The crew whispered, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others nodding slowly. They had always thought of humans as small and fragile. Now they saw the truth. Humans were not only capable, they could excel, lead, and inspire. Ethan moved to the observation deck, looking out at the stars. He felt tired, yes, but alive. The flagship was fully operational. The fleet was safe. Lives had been saved. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that humans had made their mark on the galaxy in a way that would never be forgotten. Queen Luria stood beside him quietly. For the first time in her life, she felt something new. respect for a species she had once dismissed. She realized that humans might not only survive among the stars, they might thrive, inspire, and even change the galaxy itself. Ethan looked at her and nodded quietly. The ship is ready. The fleet can move forward. Humanity is ready. The Queen smiled faintly, a rare gesture of warmth. Then let the galaxy see what humans can do. You have proven your worth, Ethan Moore. You have proven that even the smallest, most underestimated species can achieve greatness. The alien crew around them whispered again, some bowing slightly, some simply staring in awe. A human had done what no Zorathian could. A human had saved the flagship. A human had earned the Queen's trust and respect. And somewhere in the endless black of space, the galaxy began to notice. Humans were no longer observers. Humans were participants. Humans were capable of greatness, and the universe would never see them the same way again.